Get to know our exhibiting artists ahead of the Affordable Art Fair this March. Meet the Artists, a mini-series with me, Joanna Milne. So I'm here with Liliana Dobbs, a contemporary artist living in Rochford in Essex, and she creates abstract and semi-representational expressionist paintings in oils. It's lovely to see you, Liliana. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So, starting at the beginning, you grew up on a beautiful Portuguese island in Madeira, which is somewhere that I still haven't been to, and I really must visit at some point. And I guess living in the UK for some time now. Uh,
Yeah, long time.
yeah, and I wondered, how has your personal life or experiences growing up, has that influenced your art, had a big influence on your art?
Yeah, absolutely. My upbringing, the place where I grew up, it has a huge influence. Not, it's not about nostalgia at all. My work is about observing nature from an emotional perspective. And this is something that I used to do when I was very young. Um, and I observe nature from um, like I say, an emotional perspective, and I appreciate it for its resilience, strength. And from when I was quite young, I used to spend a lot of time out. You know, basically, it's a beautiful place, and most of the time you're outside. And but I always used to draw parallels between what I saw in nature and human behavior, human reactions. And I find that quite still very interesting. And I draw a lot of energy from nature. It boosts my mood and yeah, invigorates me. So that still has a huge influence in all of my work.
Yeah, and that's pretty kind of powerful. And that comes across, I think, in your paintings. Your, I mean, your paintings are so vibrant and full of energy, lots of color, the way you balance different elements in your composition, visually, just really striking. And I know, they get a lot of attention in the gallery. So how would you describe your artistic style?
It's definitely abstract expressionism if you have to give it a name. Um, Mainly because one, the actual mark making, it is quite expressive, and the intention behind the work is quite emotional as well. And I abstract it because I find that's a good way of me incorporating my feelings into the work, rather than focusing on a reiteration of what I can see. It's more important for me to demonstrate how I feel about a place than what it looks like. And that's where the abstraction comes in. But in terms of intention, I know what I am painting about. So it isn't a true abstract idea.
Yeah.
The representation is quite abstract, but the intention is it goes back to a time and place. So I know what I want to portray, but the viewer might not know
Yeah.
what the inspiration is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And some artists tend to stick with a certain size and they're comfortable with that size canvas, or whatever it is they're painting on. Um, but you seem very versatile in that you can work on a 20 by 20 canvas and then all the way up to over a meter. So, I mean, do you prefer to paint large or small? Do you find each one challenging? How does it work for you?
well, I do invest a lot of me in every little painting I do, or big painting that I do. Could be a piece on a small piece on paper, or a large painting. So I do invest quite a lot of myself in every little thing that I do. It's part of my process. It's why I do it to start with. I prefer to paint large and just let loose. when you paint small, you have to apply a little bit of restraint. And
Yeah.
I'm not always in the mood for that. So when you go large, you can just, you
Yeah.
know, be free and do what you feel like. When you go small, you have to just pay a little bit more attention as to how much you're trying to put into the piece.
Yeah.
However, in terms of the time I spend on it, um, it's rare that I spend as much time on a small piece as I do a large one because oils take a long time to oxidize and then for you to be able to go back and paint again. You don't have the same challenge with a small piece, but that doesn't mean that I get them done quickly. The
Mm.
layering, the creating of some history is still important. So it can take me quite a few weeks to get one of the tiny little paintings finished.
Yeah.
Mm.
And but it can be quite daunting, can't it? If you're used to painting small, if you then have to paint large and you get bigger brushes out, which isn't necessarily the case, but if, generally you do, it can be quite daunting, and the same in reverse. If you're used to painting large and then suddenly you're met with a tiny canvas, it's quite challenging to navigate that, but you just seem to do it really well.
Yeah, when I went for me, and I guess for most artists, when you're standing in front of a canvas that's almost as tall as you, fair enough, I'm not that tall, but still, when you're facing a white canvas that's quite big, um, yeah, it takes a little bit of time,
Yeah.
but I love it. I love it. And if it takes me 3 or 4 months to finish it, it's all part of the fun.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you've created a huge body of work at this point. Um, is there one piece of work that you've created or a series of work that is significant or meaningful to you that kind of stands out from the rest?
Yes, not necessarily the piece that I love the most because they all mean slightly different things to me. And it's a journey, and I'm glad I've created every single one of them. But there is one specific piece. It's called In the Company of Women Too, because I did a study first. Um, the reason it's quite important is because it's so much of me in it, about me, about my history, um, how I observe nature. There's so much that's so personal to me, um, that it's possibly the one that really stayed with me. I no longer have it. It's sold, and I never intended to keep it, even though it's quite a personal journey to create it. I never intended to keep it for myself. I don't need to keep it. I remember it, and it's my story. I can do something else. I did actually wanted to go out into the wild and become something else for somebody else. Um, but yeah, they won't know the story of the painting. I don't tend to explain why I did a piece. It has a title and it can give you an indication of what why I did it, but I don't explain it so that it can just have a new life with somebody else. And I'm sure they're both happy. Um, but yeah, it's there is just so much of me. You could almost I can read the painting, and it will tell you so much about me. Um, but yeah, it's nice that it's out there on someone else's wall.
It's interesting because it's especially if it's a significant piece and it means so much to you, we get so attached to pieces of work, and we can have canvases that kind of sit there for a few years and then suddenly they sell and you think, oh, and it may have been on your wall in your house or, or just in your studio, but you become really attached to it. And then you're like, I don't know that I want to let this go. But it's interesting that that was such a significant piece to you, but you almost kind of gave it wings and just let it fly. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah, it did go a bit quick. I hadn't finished for very, I'd only just finished it like weeks before it sold. But I had an opportunity to show it, and I thought, yeah, it's ready to go out there, um, and have fun. But it
yeah,
never came back. So I didn't quite say goodbye. I've I'm a bit soppy about these things, and I
Yeah,
do
me too.
have to say goodbye. I didn't quite say goodbye to that piece, and I would love to find out who bought it, but I don't know who it was. Um, so afterwards, it was a bit, oh, I won't see it again, and the idea that I may not ever see it face to face again or in real life again is quite weird.
Yeah,
Um, but it's part of the game. I'm glad it's out there
yeah.
on a little journey.
That somebody's enjoying it somewhere.
Yeah,
Something that always fascinates me is how other artists work. And I love seeing their studio space, looking at their brushes, just everything about the area. And yeah, the space that they create in. So do you have a specific routine or workspace when creating? How do you typically start your creative process?
my studio is at home, outside, its own building in my house. Um, so it's my own space. I can just go in there whenever. So the timing will depend on the mood. I paint most days, even if it's just for a little bit. So yeah, it's part of my day to day. But in terms of process, I always give myself quite a bit of time to activate the canvas, make a lot of marks, a mess. I need to make a mess before I go anywhere with it. And then I know what I want to paint. Like I say, there's always a reference point when I start a piece, but I don't actually plan how I'm going to go about it. So it starts with a big old mess, a lot of marks, and then it starts to reveal itself. And eventually I start to feel where I want to go with it. But there's no planning involved. It's just a lot of doing, and then suddenly it starts to become a little bit more focused. But I don't worry about the aesthetics or anything like that until the very, very end.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and this goes on for months in when I do a large piece.
Mm.
Um, I work on a lot of pieces at one time, because using oils, that's what most artists do, at least abstract artists, because you need that those breaks. Um, so I always work on multiple pieces, but yeah, that's kind of my routine.
So there can be many things about being an artist that make it challenging. And these could include juggling work with painting, children, not having the right workspace to work in, all sorts of things. Do you find what aspects of being an artist do you find the most challenging?
Actually, about the end phases when I'm creating, the last stage when I'm creating. The day-to-day challenges, I kind of manage them okay because it creating is really, really important for me for my general well-being and just yeah, I need it. It's quite essential for me to work. So I tend to juggle things quite well. I'm used to it. But in terms of the practice overall, something that's quite challenging, actually, apart from the running of the business side of it, but that's not an exciting topic. But
Yeah,
from the practice side, the end phase of a painting, I find quite challenging because I don't plan, and I'm not that concerned about what the end result should look like. Sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between what's happening in my mind and where I am with the painting. So normally it involves leaving it alone for a few weeks, almost to reset, then look at it with fresh eyes, and then just decide how I'm going to not resolve it, but do my last session on a piece.
yeah,
It's just the comments I made earlier about being emotionally attached to the work. Sometimes it's almost as if I have too much to say, but I have to stop at some
yeah,
point,
yeah,
and that can be a little bit like, oh, I'm supposed to stop now, and I'm not quite ready for it.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm not quite used to that yet. I don't think I ever will be.
yeah. A very simple question, but not quite such a simple answer. What does art mean to you? What does creating, painting, what does it all mean to you?
It's without making it sound like a cliche, it is almost like an addiction. In the sense that when I don't do it, I start to withdraw a little bit more each day. So if for whatever reason I go a few days without painting, I don't feel the same. So it's knowing that there's something I could be doing that just makes me feel complete is very attractive. So that's why I use the word addiction. I know if I go to that, I will feel so much better about everything.
Yeah,
So it's a need. I know it's almost like a remedy. If I just go and do that, everything else will seem better. So I couldn't do without it. Even if I was painting and just storing all my work, that's okay. Um, because it makes me happy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like a form of therapy, isn't it? I think it's why so many people during COVID who did have, their creative juices started flowing during COVID because it's that you're drawn to that idea that it just makes you feel good, the
Yeah.
freedom of expressing. And so many people, so many stories about people just beginning to create again during COVID because it was a form of therapy to them.
Yeah, it is. And I do feel um, I'm not alone in this. I feel sometimes my brain is just too busy.
Mm,
And that is the closest I will ever be to being able to really meditate.
yeah,
It just, I don't know what else could have the same effect on me. I've tried
yeah,
things in the past and it doesn't really get any close to the same feeling.
yeah,
So yeah, we mentioned I need to paint, I need to create, but it's more a case of I know what's good for me, so I'm going to go running towards it all the time, which is I'm very grateful that I have that.
yeah.
It's something I have and it works. It's a good thing.
Well, it's definitely a healthy outlet, isn't it? There could be
Yeah,
alternatives which are far less healthy. So,
absolutely.
so the controversial subject, I think, some artists leave their work untitled, and I find this more and more um, that you see work on Instagram, whatever, and it will be finished, but it will be left untitled. So it's controversial subject, as in it can be seen as abdicating responsibility, a lazy tactic. Some artists find it difficult titling work, especially abstract work. Others do it though purposefully because they believe it opens up a conversation and interpretation for the viewer. So there's lots of different ways. So what are your thoughts on untitled pieces of work?
I'm not a fan at all. I'm an artist. I don't do that with my own work, but I'm also an art collector and an art lover, and I really don't like it. Um, Not because I need to know a lot about the piece. If I have the opportunity to read about a particular piece of work, I actually avoid doing that. I go to exhibitions all the time, and hardly ever do I read about what that piece is about because it's not important. Sometimes it is, but generally it's not important to me. I do like to know the title though, because it almost gives you an insight as to what was the intention of an artist.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be a descriptive title. It might be quite cryptic, and you
Mm.
still don't know what the intention was. But even that tells you a little bit um, as to the state of mind of the artist and what would make them call something a really random title that you just cannot understand. That that tells me a little bit about the intention. But untitled is just absolutely nothing, and I just don't like it. Don't
Yeah.
like it at all.
So in March, you are one of six, you're among six artists that we're taking to the Affordable Art Fair in Battersea. What are you most excited about?
I always go to the fair. This is my first time exhibiting, but I always go to the fair as someone who appreciates art. And it's a brilliant event, always brilliant. There's just so much
Yeah.
quality work there to see in one place that the whole thing is quite exciting. This time, exhibiting, it's even better because then my work will be in front of an enormous audience because it's always really, really popular, really busy. So it's quite nice that so many people will get to see my work. And the other side of that is that I'll be exhibiting with other artists that I really admire. So I feel like I'm in such good company.
Yeah.
Uh, if that space was a group show elsewhere, it'll be a lovely show because I just love their work, and it's very nice to be putting my work up right next to theirs. So that's quite
Yeah.
exciting.
And yeah, it's just going to be so exciting. And I assume you'll be attending, you'll be coming along to visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
multiple times, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
we'll just
great because,
coordinate.
to have the artists there as well, I think is really good. You've got quite a few pieces going, haven't you?
Yeah, 12.
Top of my head, yeah, 12. I was going to say it's 12 or 13, but yeah. So big pieces, small pieces. So there's going to be a lot to see. Um,
Yeah.
Final question, a bit of a fun question that I'm asking everyone. If you could go back in time and step into the shoes of any artist from any era, who would it be and why?
hmm this was an easy one for me. Well,
Oh,
perhaps if you ask me the same question in 3 months, I may give you a different answer, depending on the mood. But I came up with somebody almost immediately. Pat Pasloff. Do you know her work?
no, I don't. Tell me about her.
Um, an American abstract expressionist. She was there when the movement really kicked off in the US. I think she passed away maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe longer, but not not that long ago, really. Um, so yeah, an abstract expressionist. Love her work. Love what she did and opened the doors for people like me to come along later and continue that sort of that type of work. Um, what I really like about her, apart from appreciating the work that she created, I think she was quite true to herself all the way through till the very end. I've heard lots of interviews with her, and she really comes across as somebody who didn't care how the work would be received.
Right.
It is what it is,
Yeah.
and it's out there. And I love that. I think I don't want to ever feel pressured about creating something that is going to appease the public because then it won't be true. So that's
Yeah.
something I really admire. But there is a second reason. Her mentor was Willem de Kooning. So, I mean, can't go wrong. That's who I'd want to be, Pat.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I've learned something now because I hadn't heard of her. But I mean, there's so many artists you could kind of
Yeah,
go on forever, couldn't you? But
yeah. But having him as a mentor, whenever she speaks about it, or whenever she did speak about it, it always sounded like the most amazing time. It would have been brilliant to have that experience because I absolutely adore his work. Um, but I see different influences in Pat's work that attracts me to it quite a bit. But yeah, that would have been absolutely amazing to work with him. But just to sit and watch him work actually would have been enough.
yeah.
Never mind having him as a mentor, but seeing him work would have been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Liliana, for spending the time. It's really
Thank
interesting to
you.
learn a little bit more about you. And You'll be coming along to the Battersea Art Fair in March from the 12th to the 16th. And we are very excited to be taking your work there. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.